Welcome back to AERO 3630, Introduction to Air Traffic Control. This is part B of the basics. In part A, we went over the history of the Federal Aviation Administration, and we looked at the structure of the FAA, as well as the National Airspace System. In this presentation, we'll be looking at operating systems of the FAA and also air traffic controller roles. Again, here's the history of the FAA. It begins after Orville and Wilbur Wright's first flight at Kitty Hawk and stretches all the way to the current decade. This list stops in 2001. And many things have happened since 2001, and we'll be going over a little bit of that in this presentation. So let's talk about the roles of the air traffic controller. The primary purpose for air traffic control is called positive separation. And in simple terms, that just means keeping airplanes apart, making sure that there are no mid-air collisions. Positive separation standards utilize not only distance in feet, but also in time or minutes or miles between aircraft. So the first and most important purpose of ATC is to prevent a collision involving aircraft operating in the ATC system. And it's also established to provide a safe and orderly and expeditious flow of air traffic. So efficiency of the air traffic system is also a primary concern of the ATC system. Also, the ATC system supports national security and homeland defense missions. So again, the primary purpose of air traffic control is to maintain positive separation. ATC specialists are required to apply positive separation standards for most, but not necessarily all aircraft within their area or their jurisdiction. So this is called or referred to as positive control. Positive control is defined as a separation of air traffic within designated airspace by air traffic control. Here's a term that you need to be familiar with. VFR stands for Visual Flight Rules. And if you're operating under visual flight rules, the pilot must remain clear of clouds and also operate within a certain visibility, depending on the airspace. So VFR basically are rules that govern the procedures for flying under visual conditions. The term VFR is also used in the United States to indicate weather conditions, so equal to or greater than the minimum VFR requirements, and as I said, that varies by airspace. The term VFR is also used by pilots and controllers to indicate the type of flight plan. Instrument flight rules, or IFR, are for pilots operating in instrument conditions or when they are flying under an instrument flight plan, using the aircraft's instruments to navigate. So instrument flight rules govern procedures for conducting any instrument flight. The IFR is also a term that is used by both pilots and controllers to indicate an IFR flight plan. And when you're flying under IFR rules or instrument flight rules, air traffic controllers maintain separation from other instrument flight rule aircraft. Terrain and also man-made obstacles like antennas, tall buildings. The term IFR is also used to indicate the weather conditions that are less than the basic visual flight rule weather minimums. And again, those minimums depend on the airspace that you're operating in. These are important things to remember. Air traffic control facilities basically are three distinct types of facilities: flight service stations, terminal facilities, and air route traffic control centers, or ARTCCs. Terminal facilities include air traffic control towers, ATCTs, and TRACONs, or terminal radar control. Now, as I've said before, airports are part of the national airspace system, and they vary in complexity. The airport complexity is determined by a lot of different factors, but primarily it's the number of annual aircraft operations that a facility handles that determines its complexity. And this is a figure that demonstrates the difference between two different airports and different complexities. Now, within each air traffic control facility, there is an organizational chart. And at the top, as you can see in this figure, is the air traffic manager. The operations manager reports to the air traffic manager, along with administrative support and a support manager. And then below the operations manager, you see a frontline manager, and then the air traffic controller. Now, flight service stations are also part of the national airspace system, and they are air traffic facilities, but the people that work in flight service stations don't really have any control authority over any kind of traffic, IFR or VFR. Their responsibility is for pilot briefings and receiving and processing IFR and VFR flight plans. Specialists also conduct VFR and IFR services, provide assistance to lost aircraft when required, and also they assist pilots in emergency situations. So the personnel, again, in flight service stations don't have any direct control over traffic, but they do provide some essential services. Here's a graphic that illustrates the different positions within the flight service station. There's an in-flight position, pre-flight position, and also a flight data position, which manages all the data, including NOTAMs or notices to air mission. So those are the three primary operating positions within a flight service station. If you need to call a flight service station for a weather briefing or to file a IFR or VFR flight plan, here's the number. Very easy to remember, 1-800-WX-BRIEF. And that they can also be reached at 1-800-WXBrief.com. The most visible air traffic control facility is the air traffic control tower. The air traffic control tower provides service to aircraft operating either on the airport or in the vicinity of the airport. And it also includes TRACON, Terminal Radar Approach Control, provides radar service to arriving and departing aircraft. So air traffic controllers in a tower, ATC, are responsible for using radios, two-way radios, air to ground, as well as visual signaling and other devices to provide air traffic control services to the aircraft that are operating within their jurisdiction or on the airport. Two-way radio communications are used to authorize aircraft for takeoff and landing. And just like any other air traffic control facility, there are personnel with different roles in the tower. This is called a tower team. And as you can see in this graphic, there is a tower coordinator, and then a local controller, flight data, clearance delivery, and a ground controller. So this is a typical team in the air traffic control tower. This is very important to remember. The tower team concept consists of 6 positions. Again, flight data, clearance delivery, local control, ground control, the coordinator or the tower coordinator, and what's called a tower associate. The tower associate provides help wherever it's needed. So if the local control member of the team needs help, the tower associate can step in. Now the TRACON also operates on a team concept. The team members include, again, flight data, but different from tower, there's a radar coordinator, a radar associate, and a radar controller. While these 4 basic positions make up the radar terminal radar sector team, they may or may not use all of the positions depending on the workload. This is an important point to remember. ARTCC, or Air Route Traffic Control Centers, there were about 20 en route centers in the lower 48 United States, contiguous United States. So remember, there are 20 air traffic control centers. The ones that are closest to us here in Murfreesboro are Atlanta, Memphis, and Indianapolis. Air route traffic control centers provide services to IFR and VFR aircraft during the segment of flight between departure and destination. The primary goal is, again, to provide air traffic control services to those aircraft. And just like TRACON, the Air Route Traffic Control Center consists of 4 basic positions: the radar flight data associate, the radar associate, the radar controller, and the radar coordinator. And again, the center may or may not use all of these positions depending on the workload. Now, the mission of the organization that's known as the Traffic Management System is to balance air traffic demand and system capacity. So the Traffic Management System is tasked with making sure that the system works efficiently. Here are examples of 4 traffic management programs: the en route sequencing program, severe weather program, ground stop program, and also the arrival sequencing program. These are all programs designed to help increase efficiency of the air traffic management system. So again, the air traffic management system, their mission is to increase the efficiency of the air traffic control system, and they do that through various programs. Again, departure sequencing program, or DSP, en route sequencing program, or ESP, arrival sequencing program, or ASP, ground delay program, reroutes, and also a ground stop program. The air traffic management system is administered within the Air Traffic Control System Command Center, or ATC SCC. And again, it's to achieve optimum use of the national airspace, minimize delays. Well, that's the end of the introduction to air traffic control on the basics of the air traffic control system. Again, just to review, we went over the history of the Federal Aviation Administration, the structure of the FAA. We looked at the National Airspace System and operating systems within the FAA, and we finally looked at air traffic controller roles.